Hey guys, I wanted to quickly share about a cool way you can support the show. Travel content creating and podcasting is so fun. But as you travel lovers know, traveling can get expensive. While I may receive trades from time to time, the flights, the behind the scenes hours filming, editing, recording, and sharing are often unseen and unpaid. There is this super cool website called buymeacoffee.com that was created specifically as a way to support creators like me. Buying Me a Coffee is a quick and simple way to show your support for the Trip Tales podcast. And Lord knows this busy Mama 3 could use a coffee to keep me recording and sharing, and maybe help with the grocery bill as well. I'll also give a special shout out by name to anyone who buys me a coffee in the following week's episode. So if you love Trip Tales, I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can get there by visiting buymeacoffee.com/Kelsey Graves. Thank you for considering supporting the show. Welcome to the Trip Tales podcast with me, Kelsey Graves. Let's jump into a new episode exploring a vacation destination that you'll want all the details about. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 15 of Trip Tales. Today we are going to be talking about a couple's trip to Costa Rica. But first, I have to thank last week's buymeacoffee.com supporter, Lauren Dawson. Lauren bought me a coffee and wrote, "I loved your podcast. We're going to Rocky Mountain National Park this summer, and I got so many ideas from the Big Sky episode." Thank you so much, Lauren, for showing your support by buying me a coffee and for your kind and encouraging words. Another super quick note is that I have two amazing discount codes live for you all right now. First, my absolute favorite line of travel bags, Dagny Dover, is giving you guys 20% off full price items. These neoprene bags are gorgeous, come with tons of pockets for helping you stay organized and look good doing it. I'm currently obsessed with the Dakota backpack in size large. There is a link in the show notes, and use code Kelsey20 for 20% off your full price order. But this code only lasts through June, so hurry up. Next, I can't stop talking about my Air Essentials Spanx jumpsuit for traveling or for a one and done date night look. It's the perfect piece to go from day to night or from airplane to resort. Not to mention, it feels like actual butter and is the most luxurious fabric I've ever put on my body. Again, there is a link in the show notes. Use code KGravesXSpanx for 10% off and free shipping. Okay, let's go to Costa Rica with my guest, Ryan. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Ryan, you are making Trip Tales history today by being here because you are the first male guest. The first 14 episodes were females, but lucky number 15, we have our first male.
Yep, first male, and it might be the first guy like north of the Mason-Dixon too. I'm not sure. I listened to most of them.
Yes, it has. I live in the Southeast, and so there's quite a few episodes, but we do have some people who have done an episode from Boston. So we're getting out there. But this does go to show that not all travel planners are females. So all you men out there listening, don't be shy from emailing me about being on the Trip Tales podcast. In fact, Ryan cold emailed me out of the blue with some ideas for Trip Tales episodes that he'd like to share about, and I was so excited. So how did you originally find out about the Trip Tales podcast?
So I think I happened across it like most things in my life at like 11:30 at night watching Instagram reels, and your Instagram story popped up, and I found it sort of happenstance. And so then started downloading some episodes and listening. I think I caught up at like episode 3 is where we first plugged in. And from there, I'm like, I have some things I can offer here.
I love it. Well, thank you for emailing me. This is a good reminder that anyone listening can email me with a trip you've been on that you think would make a great episode. You just email me at triptalespodcast@gmail.com. And that email address is also in today's show notes. But I always start with a rapid fire get to know you. So tell everyone where you live, about your family, and what you do.
Yes, so as you said, my name is Ryan. I am an eye doctor. I have two practices outside of Cleveland in Northeast Ohio, in the suburbs there. Been married to my wife, Heather, for 18 years. And from that, we have 4 kids. And so we are quite busy, as most people would be at this time of life. Owen is 14, Brooklyn, who is 12, Wyatt is 10, and Emerson is 7. So we are full blown in that stage where they're all busy and none of them can drive themselves. So we chauffeur a lot, and it dovetailed nicely with the trip planning because we somewhat jokingly tell everybody when we take these one big trips a year that it's our save the marriage trip. And so that's what we do each year. The kids go with the grandparents, and we pick a place and we spend the week somewhere, just the two of us. And we've done that for the last 4 or 5 years, skipping the COVID year, of course.
I feel that we have three kids, similar ages, 7 through 12, and they all have activities and friends, and they all want to go to the friends' pools and their neighborhoods. And yesterday, I think I counted that I made, like, if you count driving there and back, I made 20 trips between camp drop-offs, pool drop-offs, friend play dates. And I was like, at the end of the day, one asked to go to a friend's house at like 7 p.m. And I was like, no, I literally cannot drive one more place.
Right, right. It would be cheaper if I actually worked an hour away.
Right, right.
All these children trying to go places.
But we try to do the same thing. And I do think it's so important to try to get away once a year, just because it's like, oh, hi, what's your name? It's nice to
You're
see you
right.
again.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be it was just a thrill not to have to cut up someone's food or find out what the price was of chicken tenders. But as
Yes,
they've gotten older, it's gotten easier. It definitely has.
definitely. So Costa Rica is at the top of my bucket list, but I still haven't been there. So what got you interested in visiting Costa Rica?
So Costa Rica has been on the list for a little bit, mainly because with the kids' ages that we have now, we still try to pick places that are fairly easily accessible and places that we can get to and back from if need be fairly quickly. And we do a lot in the points and miles space because one of the perks of owning a business is you have to spend a lot of money. You might as well get something for it. And so what we take from it is a lot of free travel. And Costa Rica has an overabundance of ways that you can book very nice accommodations and reasonable flights for very cheap with points and miles. So it had been on the list for a while. Took us a few years to get there. But as we'll get into in the podcast, it was a phenomenal trip.
Awesome. And I know Points and Miles is an entirely different podcast, and we're not going to get totally into it today, but do you have a credit card or an airline that you're like, this is one or two that we absolutely love the return we get on?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of flexible points, meaning kind of go with Chase or go with American Express for the most part, and then transfer those points because you can send them to a bunch of different travel partners. And my gosh, there's podcasts and blogs and websites that can really get in the weeds with it, and we don't want to do that. But I can tell you that the out-of-pocket cost for us for a week in Costa Rica, including all the food and the excursions and whatnot, was about $1,100.
That's
So
insane.
it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and having businesses certainly helps that, but I know plenty of people who don't, who can do similar things. And so if you really put the time in, you can save all that money, which you'll instead spend on your kid's baseball team or something like that.
Right. We don't currently run a business through a credit card, but we do use the Chase Sapphire, which has seemed to help a lot. Like I use that for all my expenses because it's really good for grocery and food delivery and all that kind of stuff. So that has helped us quite a bit. It's definitely not paying for full trips yet, but it's paying for like the entire hotel stay, which is pretty
Right.
exciting.
Right.
Okay. There are so many areas of Costa Rica, rainforest, volcanoes, beaches. So how did you decide what areas you were going to visit?
Yeah, you could probably spend a month in Costa Rica and still not get to everything that it has to offer. One of the things people fail to realize is A, where it's at. It's in Central America, so it's not truly the Caribbean. And it's also much bigger. When you think about these tropical destinations, you're thinking about islands and, you can see it all in 4 days and you spend the rest of it at a beach. But Costa Rica is a good sized country. And so we basically just sat down. Well, and by we, I mean me, because I've created this monster of a travel partner and a wife who says, you just tell me where to go and when to be on the flight, and I trust you for the rest of it. So I looked at most of what we were going to do, and I said the two things I wanted to try and hit was the Mount Arenal, the volcano, which is in the middle of the country in the rainforest. And then the second stop I wanted to hit was more destination driven, and that was the Hyatt Andaz because it's known and once again the points and miles world as like a really great redemption opportunity, and it's on the Pacific coast, and it's just a little bit different than anything we had traveled to before.
Awesome. So how did you get there?
Yeah, so when you go to Costa Rica, as we mentioned, one of the beauties is that it's very easy to get there. You can fly from almost any major hub city and get to one of the two major airports in Costa Rica. The capital city is San Jose, and that probably has the most flights. It is on the Caribbean, the eastern side of the country. Um, I will give you a heads up, even though I've never flown in there. Rumor has it airport's a little bit nuts. It's a little bit more hectic. So if you're traveling with kids, might want to take that into account. We flew into the smaller airport that's on the Pacific side called Liberia. And Liberia is a traveler's dream in that it has about 12 gates. And we were through security in about 90 seconds. And it was
Amazing.
a piece of cake. And I'm sure it takes longer if you travel at peak times, but the entryway into the country did take a little bit longer because, as with most of these vacation destinations, every flight lands within 45 minutes of each other. So it probably took 90 minutes to get through customs on the way in. But on the way out, our flight was leaving that a little bit earlier than most others, and we were through security so fast, like it almost made you wonder, did they look at anything? So
It's good and bad. It's like, well,
that's right.
here we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. But nevertheless, yeah, Liberia is a little more laid back. It's a little easier to access. Traffic is not an issue. It's much easier if you're going to rent a car to do it on that side and drive around versus having to fight some of the craziness of the city traffic in a foreign country in
That's
their
great to
capital.
know. And what month did you guys go?
We went in January of 2024. So yeah, just this
Okay.
past January.
And is that considered high season, low season?
Yeah, so they have two seasons in Costa Rica. They call them, or we call them rainy and dry. And rainy season starts about July and goes through the end of December. Dry season goes from January through the end of June-ish. So we were technically in the beginning of their dry season, which is their high time. I later learned from locals that they say they have two seasons, rain and more rain. So it's not exactly dry like you would expect it to be. You're probably still going to get rained on at some point while you're there, especially if you go to the rainforest. It's in the name.
Right.
Uh, but nevertheless, yeah, we went in January. It's technically high season, but crowds were a non-issue anywhere we went.
Awesome. So your first destination was in the rainforest. How did you guys get there? Did you rent a car? How did you get to your first hotel?
Yeah, so friends of ours who we were traveling with had rented a car, but they had come in a day earlier than us, so they were already ahead of us. So we actually booked a shuttle through the hotel, and they will go to either airport to get you. I want to say the shuttle for two people was not cheap. It was about $250. They gave you water, they gave you some snacks. It was a very comfortable ride. It was one of those Sprinter vans. One of the things you have to realize about Costa Rica, though, is within an hour of the major cities, the roads are great. They're paved. It's just like what you would see in the States, not a problem. Once you get about an hour outside the cities, it becomes much more of an off-road experience than
Mhm.
what you're used to. And when you go towards the mountains, there are some switchbacks. You are winding up and down. That 70-kilometer journey from Liberia to our hotel took us 3 hours.
Oh
So
my
you
gosh.
are not traveling quickly after you get past the first hour.
Okay,
Uh,
so pack your patience.
Pack your patience and pack your Dramamine if you happen to be a little bit motion sick, because it certainly can mess with you. My wife does tend to get motion sick, and so she was feeling it by the time we got there. But when a flight lands like ours did at like 3:30 in the afternoon, by the time you got through security and everything, it was pushing 5. The sun goes down like clockwork because you're almost on the equator by 6:15 every night. I would not want to drive those roads myself at night. I was
Great
much happier to
point.
have somebody who knows the country driving at that point. So we got to the hotel about 8 o'clock at night, and it was seamless. They had everything set.
Okay, great. Well,
But
and
yeah,
then it's like, yeah, it's a little expensive, but you're safe. They know the way, they know the best way. If there was a lot of rain, maybe one road would be a little bit flooded. Like, I totally agree. When you're out of your comfort zone, and especially in a place like Costa Rica where the roads can get rugged, book the shuttle.
right, absolutely, yeah. And on the way back, which we'll get to, our friends had the car, so it was easier to pay it knowing you only had to pay it one way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this hotel, I don't know how to say the first word, but it looks absolutely amazing.
It's Nayara.
Nayara Gardens.
Yes, yes. So Nayara Gardens is part of we'll call it three hotel property, and they're all interconnected. You can walk between all of them. So Nayara Gardens is smack dab in the middle. And that's probably the one that most people will see. It's also the one that you can book most readily if you're trying to book in a travel portal or something like that. It has the most readily available. Kids are allowed there. Um, if you want a little bit more of a rustic feel, connected to the north is Nayara Tented Camp. Now, I have to say, friends of ours went after us and stayed there, and it darn near looked like the same room to me. Like they threw some burlap over some things, so
Yeah,
it really didn't
it's
look like
glamping, but
it
not
was
necessarily
glamping. Yeah,
camping. Yeah.
it was not that rustic. And then below Nayara Gardens is Nayara Springs. That's the adult only section of the property. Now, I would say this, at least when we were there, the clientele skewed significantly older in Nayara Springs. And so I think it was largely folks who were of retirement age or older who were wanting peace and quiet. And that property tended to be a little flatter. The rest of them, you were trekking up and down a lot of steps and some hills.
I looked up Nayara Gardens and it looks absolutely phenomenal, like Zen meets luxury. How did you find out about this place? It just looks like immediately upon watching videos, which Ryan actually has put together some cool YouTube videos that gives you a vibe of both the hotels they stayed at that we'll link because that's an easy way to kind of get the vibe. But I was like, I'm immediately relaxed just
Yeah.
looking at this video.
When you pull up, they have the typical Caribbean, Central American open air hotel lobby, and they sit you down and they give you your welcome drink, which you definitely need after 3 hours in a Sprinter van. So
Yes.
at least you're feeling pretty good by the end of the check-in process. And so they will throw your luggage on a golf cart because of the hills, and they'll take you up the hill, and they call their rooms the casitas. And so casita number 10, I think, is where we were at. And we walked in this room, and I looked at my wife and I said, I don't think we belong here. We travel with kids. We stay at Hampton Inns and Staybridge Suites, like this. We're not in Kansas anymore. This place is ridiculous. And so we had found it because we were looking in the La Fortuna area, which is the city you're going to want to search for if you're trying to stay in this general vicinity. And, they've got all kinds of budget points and price points. You can really rough it and do the eco lodges for under $100 a night, or you could pay some astronomical sum and have your every want and desire taken care of. This was sort of in the middle for us, and it had availability that we could book through American Express, which saved us a bunch of money. And so it's how we ended up there. I knew it was going to be nice. It was way nicer than the pictures looked even when I booked it. Like, it was ridiculously beautiful.
Yeah, you had written in your notes that you booked it through points, but you were in a standard room, but it looks absolutely incredible, gorgeous, very zen, spacious bathroom. Like the room looked insane.
Yeah, the room is insane. So first off, bed was unbelievably big for a king bed and very comfortable. When you walk in, of course, they have the welcome gift. So you get your champagne and your fruit and, macaroons and that type of stuff. Directly out from the bed, you have a walkout plunge pool, which was bigger than anything else I had seen for a plunge pool. And then as you wrap around the back of the space, like legit, the back fourth of the entire space was a huge bathroom. And so you had a massive vanity, and you had a double rain, what they call waterfall showers indoors. But you had a slider door from that shower. You could go outside in your private little courtyard that's all fenced in that had dual rain shower heads outside.
Yeah,
So
shower in the rainforest. What could be better?
literally,
And I think your plunge pool overlooked the Mount Arenal volcano. Is that right?
yeah. So Mount Arenal is the volcano. Now,
Thank you for saying it correctly. I don't even
no,
know how
you're
to say
good.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Arenal.
I looked ridiculous the entire trip because I can't pronounce anything. I mean, I'm Pennsylvanian and Ohio, and like we talk funny to those folks too. So, but no. So the volcano's out there. I will tell folks you have to get lucky to see the volcano from your room because there's all these miniature ecosystems that are occurring in and around the rainforest, and it tends to be shrouded in clouds a lot. So there was one day where you could almost see the peak of the volcano, but most days you could see that mountain out there, but details were pretty obscured because of just the mist and the fog and the various temperature changes.
The plunge pool, back to it because I love a plunge pool. It looked like it had like an infinity edge. It looked so fancy.
It has an infinity edge. I accidentally stepped on this button, which turned on jacuzzi jets. So it
Amazing.
was like, oh, it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever stayed in. So it was warm. It was well taken care of. They cleaned it out every day for you. I've stayed in plunge pools and other places where, collected so many leaves and
Yeah.
debris that you spent the first half hour just trying to feel like it was safe to go in it. Uh, this one, every time you came in, like it was just beautiful. It had lights that would light it up at nighttime. So if you want to go sit there at night, um, zero negative things to say about that entire experience.
And I'm assuming since you had a standard room that all rooms come with a plunge pool
Right.
at this
Yeah.
place. Yeah.
Yeah. They all do.
Okay, tell us about walking around the grounds. Is it like a spread out resort? Is your casita like its own unit, or is it all connected, kind of like a hotel? Tell us kind of about navigating the resort.
So you're tight against other rooms. So these individual casitas are basically separated by privacy fences, but you can't see anything. I mean, you can see no one or anything when you're in your room. They kind of are in clusters. Like you'll get 4 or 5 in a row, and then you'll have some space where you have to walk a bit, and then you'll have another group of them. And so they're spread throughout. The grounds are immaculately maintained. There wasn't a shred of garbage anywhere in that place. The flowers, of course, you've got your lush rainforest soil and plenty of moisture. So the plant life was phenomenal. You do have to pack good shoes to walk because, as I mentioned, there are a lot of steps and it's pretty hilly in many places, but most of it is paved. So it's not like you're going to trip over loose gravel or something like that. It's all very well taken care of. But I mean, you're going to put some steps on.
Awesome. Tell us about a typical day for you two at this resort.
Yep. So at this resort, we sort of split it in half. So half the time we relaxed. We got up early one day and went on a sloth walk because they have sloths that live on in the rainforest there at the resort.
That is
And so
so cool. I
they
love
have
a
a guide
sloth.
that would take you out at 6 in the morning, and Costa Rica is an hour behind us in Eastern time. So it felt like 7 to me anyway. So it was okay.
Yeah,
And he has his telescope set up, and he'll find wildlife and set it up and and he'll take pictures with your cell phone through the telescope so you can have your own photos.
cool.
So we found the sloth. His name is Tony, and
Oh my gosh.
so they have that. A lot of bird life that he would get. You'll find a lot of people who are bird watchers love this area because there's just so much wildlife there. They have these monkeys that to them are as annoying as raccoons are to us, and they kind of look like raccoons. They tell you not to feed them because they literally will never leave you alone. But you will find them all over the place on the side of the road, finding fruits and stuff like that. So we did a lot of that, a lot of pools that were on site, and there was like no one in them. And so Heather and I said, yeah, I think we can do that. And so they have one pool with a swim up bar where they have legit cement patio sets submerged in the pool. So we could sit there and like read.
I saw
Or
that in your video. I think it was probably your wife sitting at a table in a pool, reading a book very close
yes.
to a swim up bar. I was like, that looks incredible.
Yeah, we're big bourbon fans, not the biggest of like straight beer, although, certainly will, but something about Central American and Caribbean beer just hits different. And
Yeah.
so, and it's the most affordable thing down there too when you're on the resort. And so it was certainly not a bad way to spend a few days. We spent a lot of time just exploring. The grounds were so beautiful that you went exploring. On the Nayara Spring side, they have their own coffee shop that doubles as a check-in space for the springs part of the resort. So we went and saw that. And then up on the northern edge, up closer to the tented camps, they have their own hot springs. And those hot springs are fed by the volcanic springs that come out of Mount Arenal. And they are somewhere between 85 and 100 degrees at all times, depending on what the water's like. And so uh, I found during those rainy times where my temperature might have dropped a little bit, go sit in a hot spring in the rain.
That
Top
sounds
5 thing I've ever
awesome.
done.
Did you guys check out the spa at all?
Did not, no. That's on the bucket list of things if we went back. The spa services were priced what you would expect at some resort spa.
Yeah.
But certainly, everybody who I talked to who had gone raved about it. I mean, it is set up just like everything else there, taking advantage of the natural beauty of the rainforest. And yeah, I heard zero complaints from anyone that we were having breakfast with who had visited the spa.
Well, and sitting by some of the pools looked like a spa experience in and of itself. I noticed that they had those big pool loungers with the thick mattresses where you're
Yeah.
just like very comfortable by the pool, not on some rickety old pool chair.
Nope, nope, very nice. And like I said, for being high season, I mean, there couldn't have been more than a dozen people we saw the entire time that we were exploring the property. Like it was phenomenal.
So always easy to get a chair, a seat, a drink, all those things.
Yeah, yeah, and that was the biggest pool. But if that one happened to be full, you could have walked 500 yards and found another one, and
Awesome.
there's plenty of options.
I know you guys did a handful of excursions, which we will talk about in a minute, but were there any daily planned activities or classes or things at the resort that you could take advantage of if you wanted to?
They had lots of things you could take advantage of. The one thing on site was that we did was the sloth and wildlife tour in the morning. That was the big one, but they had several others that we didn't take part in. They did book things off site for you. So, like for example, we went on a coffee and chocolate plantation tour. Because when in Rome, might as
Yeah.
well might as well visit. And so they arrange all that. The vans come and pick you up, take you right there. You do your 3 hour tour, and then the van takes you back to the hotel. And so it was very enjoyable.
So let's talk about that real quick. I saw that in your video and then I looked it up. Don Juan Arenal. Am I still saying that
Yes.
wrong?
Yep, that's
Arenal?
correct. Yeah.
Arenal. It looked like a guided tour of how coffee and chocolate are made. And I looked it up and it gets 5 stars on TripAdvisor after hundreds of reviews. So people really love this tour.
Yeah, it's I'm not a coffee guy, but my wife raves about it, and so this is kind of like the humorous. I'll humor you, and I'll go on these things type
Right.
of thing. It was fascinating, and they take you through the whole history of it. They take fresh beans there and grind it up and make you coffee and give you little shot glasses of it, so you can try like really like fresh Costa Rican coffee. So that was neat. And then the second half is all about chocolate. And when you get to the end of that, they actually have you grind up cocoa powder and mix up your own chocolate bar, and they flash freeze them there for you. And what I learned from that is we in the West add a boatload of sugar to make that stuff edible, because I didn't add enough and it was pretty bitter.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, let's talk about some other excursions while we're on the excursion route. It looks like you guys did some pretty incredible zip lining. Was that booked through the resort or was that booked on your own?
That was booked on our own. Skyline Adventures is who we use for that. There's a couple in the country, but Skyline was the closest one to La Fortuna where we were at. It was about a 20-minute drive for us. Um, Very robust. They have a lot of different adventure things you can do. Zip lining has been something I've wanted to try for a while. It was one of those things where it looked like it'd be exciting and still a decent chance I'd return home.
Yeah.
So let's give this a shot. We splurged and I did rent the GoPro. And so I think for $15 or $20, they'll give you the helmet with the GoPro attached.
Oh,
And
nice. I've always wondered how people get those videos if they don't have, I just assumed everyone had their own GoPros, but that's cool that they let you rent it and then you get to like buy the video footage or whatever.
they do, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Okay.
so you get actually, I take it back. You actually didn't have to rent the GoPro if you ended up keeping any video footage. So it was all lumped in there. And so the scariest part is the first big drop is a 300-meter ravine you're zip lining over.
Wow.
And the longest one, which is the one that I have in my video, is over a half-mile long cable. And you
You're
get
like,
up,
how sturdy is this cable?
you're not going anywhere, and you are strapped in good. So you like when you get through the first line, you realize you're not going anywhere, and that guys my size who weigh what I weigh, you're going to get to the end. And the guides were hilarious. They would, the women would get up and they'd be like, okay, apply the brakes, 10 feet before you get to the end. And then I would get up there and they'd be like, please don't kill the guy on the other side. So, I think they were telling me to break at about the halfway point. So, but it was
Nice.
it was great. It was really a neat experience. It's just not something you get in any of the places we had gone thus far in our lives.
Yeah, such a cool way to get like a view of the area you're at, like the rainforest or whatever. I've still never ziplined either. I'm totally open to it, and I think it'd be fun to do with our kids someday, but I'd want to do it in an area where it's, different than just going to East
Right.
Tennessee and ziplining through Tennessee.
Right, exactly. And you hear some people who take these cruises and they get to the private island and the zip lines, like 30 feet in the air over top of the beach. And you're like,
Yeah,
man,
it's like, what's
that's
the
not
point?
what I'm here for.
Right. Okay. And then the other one I noticed was Mystico Hanging Bridges, which also seems like a popular excursion in that area.
Yes, very popular, very touristy. Essentially, you drive up this mountain, and this giant parking lot opens up before you. But the whole park is set up basically with a set of, I want to say 10 or 12 hanging bridges. I can't remember exactly, of varying heights. And some of the bridges move a little more than the others as you're walking across them. Beautiful wildlife, beautiful foliage. It's basically a place where folks can go and you can take your time, you go at your own pace. We had folks that were, using a cane to get across some of them, and then we had folks with young kids who couldn't wait to jump on the bridge. And so, you had all kinds of folks there. It was probably the worst weather day we had when we were there. It rained quite a bit while we were out on the hanging bridges, and that just made it very foggy. So we couldn't see out as far as we otherwise would have. But you'll see photos if you look online of people who get just these breathtaking pictures of the volcano and the surrounding rainforest from the top of some of these bridges.
Were there any other excursions at this particular area that I'm missing?
That's all that we did. We had split up the trip, to be a week. So we spent 3 nights here at Nayara, and we did the excursions that we mentioned, like one each day.
Perfect.
And then we spent the rest of the time over on the Pacific coast there. So had we had more time and stayed there longer, we probably would have found more stuff to do.
Let's go back to the resort for a minute and talk about restaurants because we didn't talk about any like food. So what were the restaurants like at Nayara Gardens?
Yeah, the restaurants are, I would say, elevated cuisine. Not going to get your chicken nuggets for your kids there very readily, although I'm sure they have them somewhere. The main restaurant is right off the hotel lobby. It's called La Terraza, I believe. That's where you have breakfast. One of the perks of booking it through the Amex portal is you get $100 property credit and free breakfast every day. And
Perfect.
the breakfast was phenomenal. They had your typical Western fare. They had the best ranchero eggs we've ever tasted
Yum.
there. When you walk in, the first thing they hand you is a coconut with a straw, and so everybody gets one as you go to breakfast.
How fun.
It was phenomenal. You had pastries and their version of donuts and all that type of stuff, and then they had the omelet station and the ranchero eggs, and they would bring the coffee to you, and they had this just giant wall of fruit that you could pick from, and just a we're not the biggest breakfast eaters, but we were for those days.
Yeah, when you get it for free and it's that beautiful, it's like, what today I eat breakfast.
Today at breakfast, I'll just have a small lunch. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly right. There are other restaurants on site. We ate one night at Asia Luna, which is their Asian and sushi restaurant that's on site there. A word to the wise, you do need to make reservations. When we wandered up, we had not, and we were just looking for something light. And because they weren't very busy, they allowed us to stay. They just asked if we could be done in an hour because they had other people who had made reservations. So if you're going to go with any significant size of party, or if you're going to want the entire laid back experience, they kind of ask that reservations get made. And then up by the tented camp is Ayla, which we did not get a chance to go up there and explore, but it's a Mediterranean cuisine. Once again, looked phenomenal on the pictures, and the menu looked great, but only so many hours in the day.
Right. And then you had mentioned at the beginning, and I noticed it on their website, the amazing coffee bar, which is huge and beautiful.
Mhm.
So I'm sure they have some delicious Costa Rican coffee there. And then did they have like grab and go type stuff if you just needed a little
Yeah,
snack?
so where we were at, it was hard to find, but if you went over by the coffee bar, there was. So
Okay.
over in the Nayara Spring section, that whole section, the basement is the check-in desk for Nayara Springs, and then upstairs is the coffee part.
So the coffee bar is over in that Nayara
It
Springs
is,
area.
yeah.
Okay. Got
But
it.
once you get your coffee or your drink or your grab and go pastry or whatever you want, you can actually go out in the balcony, and you're sitting over this small ravine watching, monkeys jump from tree to tree and things like that while you're drinking coffee.
And then did you guys eat anywhere that's memorable outside of the resort, or did you pretty much make it back to the resort for all your meals?
We actually ate more often off resort because with a car, it was significantly cheaper to drive the 7 or 8 minutes. And if you go into La Fortuna, the city proper, it's a bit crowded, it's a bit hectic, but there's all these what they call sodas, and sodas are just basically family owned small restaurants in Costa Rica, and you can eat very inexpensively at a lot of those. We actually turned the other direction because the older I get, the less hectic I want in my life. And
Yes.
there was a restaurant called, if I can remember it, El Novillo Restaurante de Arenal. It has this giant statue of a cow out front. That's how we remembered it. But you could get fantastic pizzas and flatbreads and steaks, and the drinks were half of what it was on the resort. And so you could drive 8 minutes and probably save yourself upwards of $30-$40 per couple. So that's what
Awesome.
we went there a couple times
Did
and
you
had.
just happen upon that place, or had you looked it up and said, this is a place that we might want to go to?
That was a random one. We were driving back from one of the excursions, and haven't eaten lunch, and it's 1:30 in the afternoon, and I'm very food oriented, so it was time to stop, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, let's see if this place is any good, and it was fantastic.
Okay,
So we
great. We'll put
went
that in the
back
show
again.
notes, and I'll double check with you that I have the right one. But just in case people find themselves in La Fortuna and need a quick bite, then they'll know this is a great place to
Yeah,
stop.
absolutely.
Okay. I'm assuming you wouldn't say that this is necessarily family friendly, even though you said kids are allowed. It seems like more of an adult or couples resort. Would you say that?
I would say so. Like the vibe was definitely more adult. I didn't see a lot of activities for kids to do. Like
Yeah.
there wasn't going to be those things where the kids could sit around and be entertained without you.
Right.
So I think if I was going to travel it with kids, I would probably choose a different place to stay, just from the standpoint of we may need something a little more geared towards them.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, teens or older, I might change my mind, because if they're the type that can sit by a pool and relax, and the Wi-Fi is surprisingly good down there,
Yes.
so you can entertain them at that age with a pool and a cell phone.
Yes. All right. Is there anything else you want to share about Nayara Gardens that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think we covered everything.
Okay, awesome. So after 3 nights at this dreamy rainforest retreat, it was time for you guys to move on. So tell us where you went next.
So we made the 3-hour trek west to the Pacific side, and we went to the Hyatt Andaz Papagayo. That same thing as when we came from the airport. In fact, we drove past the airport to get to where this resort is. The first hour and a half was rough with the windiness, and
And
then
were
once
you in the rental car or were you in a
we were in
shuttle?
the rental car at this point.
Okay.
And so the good news was you could stop whenever you felt like you needed to, and you'd find some rest stops or a lookout on top of a mountain and pull off the road. And
And like your cell phone and Google Maps works just fine for this?
it really did. There was only one section through the mountain where I would say cell phone signal was kind of spotty,
Okay.
but we didn't have any issues. And the nice thing about Google Maps is, as long as you start that navigation before you leave the resort, it's going to keep on going as long as it can track you. And so we didn't run into any issues that way. The only issue we ran into is when we got to the resort, Google Maps thinks the entrance to the resort is not where the entrance actually is. So we ended up down on this pier down by the beach and said, well, unless we're going to swim to the resort, we're going to have to go back up the hill and figure it out. We got it figured out. And so just word to the wise, maybe they fixed it by now. But as of 5 months ago, you might find yourself down by the water and not at the front gate for the hotel.
Hilarious. That's just part of those like travel hiccups that make us all better travelers and better people. And we actually have to figure something out with our like own brains as
That's
opposed to
right.
our
Yes.
phones. Okay. So tell us about what type of room you booked at the Hyatt Andaz.
Yeah, so the beauty of the Hyatt Andaz is if you have Chase points, you can transfer them 1-to-1 to Hyatt. At the time, it was 21,000 points a night, which is just a ridiculous steal for any of these rooms. It's gone up a little bit since then, but it's still a great deal. When you pull in, there's this just ginormous lined with palm trees road that takes you down, and it's shared with the Four Seasons. So if you veer to the right after the guard shack, you go to the Four Seasons. You veer to the left, you go to the Hyatt Andaz. And so we ended up in a standard room, just because it was booked with points again. And once again, open air lobby, they take care of everything. You pull in, someone's running to get your bags and they're throwing them on the golf carts. Someone's taking your keys because they'll valet everything for you, and you just get to keep the car there. And they really took care of everything from check-in to check-out for us. Even if you're randomly walking on this property and they look like you may want it, they will pull over and ask if you want to ride. Like
Oh,
they
nice.
they will always make sure that you're taken care of.
Lovely. And so what was your room like?
Yep. So had we not gone to the Nayara Gardens first, I would have thought this was the nicest room I had seen in a long time. But
Yeah.
this room was fairly standard. It's more of traditional hotel fare. So the buildings are made to look like traditional Costa Rican Pacific Coast buildings. Most of them have 3 floors. and there's probably 20 to 30 rooms spread across each floor. So you have an elevator, you have some steps. We just took the steps because our room was closer to it. Traditional king bed, television. Once again, you had dual rain shower heads in the shower. No outdoor shower for this one. You had a balcony instead that you
Oh,
could go
nice.
out there and sit on. And the beautiful thing about Andaz properties, and this applies anywhere where you stay because it applied to ours in New York City, they have free non-alcoholic drinks and snacks in the room. They refill them
Great.
every morning. So if you do travel with kids, it can be a significant cost savings to load up the bag with the waters and the soda or the bags of chips they give you. And each morning when housekeeping comes in, they reload the mini fridge for you.
Well, that is lovely and so good to know because it's like usually it's like, don't touch the mini fridge.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't have known this except, once again, doing a lot of research, but we had stayed in New York City to go see the Rockettes at an Andaz, and the prices in New York City are worse than Costa Rica. And so you're very careful. And they have a big sign that says, non-alcoholic drinks and snacks are free in every Andaz property. I said, I have
Amazing.
found my new favorite resort to stay at. So
Yes, that is great. Especially like you said, if you're traveling with kids, it's like, here, grab
absolutely.
some chips.
That's right.
Okay, tell us about the grounds of this resort.
Yeah. Grounds similar to Nayara Gardens, very hilly. So the property where you stay is up on top of essentially this cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Um,
Beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah, absolutely beautiful. A lot of trees, a lot of natural foliage. The grounds are very walkable. Once again, it's paved, but I would say they were steeper than even what we saw at Nayara Gardens. So you really do have to make sure that you can walk a good distance if you're doing this. However, the golf carts are plentiful and they are always happy to run people back and forth. So it's not like you are going to be put out if you can't walk it, but certainly if you're younger, just expect it. It was a little challenging. About a year ago, I tore my Achilles, and so I
Oh, ow.
considered it my physical therapy for the week, just walking the grounds. But
Yes.
everything's paved, all the steps are well maintained, so I never felt like I was in danger or anything.
Okay, awesome. I noticed from your videos again, which we'll link, that the pools looked really cool. They almost had like a winding, wavy infinity edge that overlooked the grounds and the ocean. I was like, those look quite like kind of unique and cool.
Yeah, very unique, more resortish feel to their pools, and they were much busier than what we saw in Nayara. The clientele also, I would say, skewed younger, and so I would say the average age was probably 41 like me instead of being closer to retirement age. Um, they do have an adult only pool that is right outside the adults only restaurant that is at the far end of the resort, but the rest of it's open and free to use for kids. And there's a kids club on site that you can drop your kids off as well. And while we didn't have any with us, we did see some people taking advantage of it.
Did you guys spend any time at the adults only pool or the adults only restaurant?
So the way we broke it up there is we went to the adults only restaurant one night. It was very good. It was delicious food, but truth be told, I don't know that it was so much better than the other restaurants we tried on site that made it worth the price
Yeah.
necessarily. Still very good. You won't be disappointed. The adults only pool was fine. Like there was nothing magical about it. It was nice and quiet. But after spending a few days in the quiet in the middle of the rainforest, I actually didn't mind a little bit more excitement,
Yeah.
or at least people being around at the other pools. So we spent more time at the main pool. Kids be darned.
Yeah. You're like, I'm officially relaxed.
That's
Now
right.
I can come back
Relaxed
to
enough.
reality. I
Yes.
noticed in your video they had sunscreen and water stations, which I know is kind of a small touch, but I was like, well, how helpful would that be if all resorts had that?
Yes. If you don't, for some reason, or if you run out, do not spend the ridiculous prices on sunscreen or anything like that. At this
Right.
resort, they just had giant bins of it. And so
That's
they had
awesome.
the reef safe sunscreen, they had towels, they had water with cucumber or water with lemon in these giant jugs. You could come up and take a cup and refill your water bottle. Like it was all set
It's the
out by
little
our
things.
pool.
It's like we just need some water and some sunscreen and we're good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then adjacent to the main pool was this old van that they turned into a coffee place. And so you could walk up and get your caffeine shot in the afternoon if you really needed it to keep going.
Cute. Now, since this resort is kind of up on a cliff, like you said, is there a beach area?
There is, you got to go down a lot of steps to get there.
Okay.
Nice big wooden steps. when you get down to the beach, it's not a beach like you'd think of on the Caribbean. It's the Pacific. It reminds me more of the beach like I would see in California or the
Yeah, like
Pacific Coast.
rugged.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and a little rougher. The Pacific Ocean is a little less predictable when it comes to what type of water you're going to get for the day. So they have one area that is roped off that people can swim in. You can't go out probably more than 20 feet. They've got buoys and stuff to block people from going out further. The other section is where people can rent for free things for water sports. And so they'll let you do, the kayaking or some wind sailing, things like that. The more advanced, of course, you have to pay for, but there's some basic stuff you can rent for free. And then at that beach, they also have a boat that'll take you to their little private island. And so you can
That's
take this little,
cool.
yeah, a little 8 to 10 minute boat ride across the bay. I believe it also is shared with the Four Seasons. I'm not entirely sure, but I thought I heard someone say that. We went over in the morning. It was a ghost town. It was great. We did some snorkeling right offshore. We really enjoyed it. But
Was the snorkeling included?
it was, yeah. You just walk up to the little shack they have there. They've got all kinds of snorkel gear. They'll let you try a few on to see what fits you.
And is there a place to like relax? Like, are there chairs and stuff to kind of sit by the ocean?
Oh yeah, they have a ton of chairs, chairside service. They have some cabanas, which are all free too. Like you can go sit in these cabanas if you wanted to. It's on, and people will come up and take your food orders. It's a smaller menu as you would expect, being a little bit off-site. But if you're looking to go off-site, maybe you just kind of want to get a change of scenery. I mean, it was a nice place to visit.
Yeah, that sounds great. I was going to ask if there was food and drink over there. So it sounds like you can get all those things over on the private island as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about excursions in this area of Costa Rica. So it looked like you guys went from your video on a quite strenuous waterfall hike.
Yeah, that was the only point where I was wondering if my wife was trying to leave me in Costa Rica.
Off you?
Yeah.
He's like, how's your life insurance policy?
It still hasn't forgiven me for the Achilles tear. So,
Yeah.
so that hike is labeled as a mild to moderate hike. And, I'm not in the shape I was 20 years ago, but I don't consider myself to be in bad shape. And that was a workout.
Do you remember what the hike is called if someone was looking it up, or the area?
Oh goodness, I'd have to see it.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes, but
I'll
the
find
waterfall hike. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the most well-known waterfall hike. You meet at the shack alongside the road, and it's one of those situations where you're really questioning, like, what are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah.
And they load you into the back of this ancient pickup truck and take you off-roading, and then
wow.
It's in the national park type area, and then you go on this hike. And the hike is lengthy, and you're hiking up, like they have some ladders cut into these boulders that you got to climb up and over, and you're wading through some water. So wear your swimsuit whenever you're doing this hike. Water shoes with good tread are 100% necessary, because if you try and do it in flip-flops, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, your flip-flops are going to be gone.
That's right. When you finally get to the waterfall, you'll reach it whenever you see this giant rope coming out towards you in the water. And that's because the current's so strong, you can't swim into the waterfall. And it's kind of hidden behind these big cliffs. So you, with your watertight bag on your back, are like pulling yourself horizontally parallel to the rope along this. And then once you get inside, they kind of push you along to the outside, and you can have your little pools with the waterfall there. But it's an experience unlike any other. I've gone to other waterfalls. We did one when we went to Grenada. This was a much harder hike to get there.
Yeah, this is for the adventure seekers.
That's right. Yeah. Beautiful. Glad we did it, but also glad when it was over.
Yeah. And was that booked through the resort, or did you guys book that separately?
We booked all this stuff ourselves. And,
okay.
And the one thing you do have to realize when you stay at the Andaz, it's a little more remote. Like you're a good half an hour to 45 minutes from anything.
Okay.
So if you're going to book it, not that they wouldn't have coordinated, I'm sure they would have, but certainly it's going to be a bit more of a hike to get to these places than if you're in the rainforest even.
What area of Costa Rica is it called that the Hyatt Andaz is in? Or what town? Or
yeah, Peninsula Papagayo is what they call it.
And then you guys went on a catamaran snorkeling adventure?
Yeah, we try to do that every place we go.
Did you see sea turtles?
That's one of the things they will say that they often see. We only saw one, but still, a lot of schools of tropical fishes. Occasionally you'll see a stingray or something like that. But
I love a sea turtle. So even if I see one, I'm like, oh, that's a win.
Yeah, mission accomplished, right?
And then from your video again, the Costa Rican topography looked so cool, like from out from the water perspective,
Mhm.
very rugged and like rustic beaches, which I think is just kind of maybe what the vibe you get when you're going to Costa Rica.
Right, and that's what I loved about visiting the country is that it's big enough that you could legit see different areas and different topographies and different climates all in one trip. Um, the weather in the rainforest was humid, but mid to low 80s the entire time. Like you were fine. You go to the beach, you drive 3 hours to the west, and it was 95 degrees. So it really depends on where you go. The climates really do change as you go from rainforest to more coastal towns.
Interesting. Okay, let's go back to the resort for a little bit and talk about restaurants. So I'm assuming they also had like a main restaurant that everybody kind of ate at each day.
They do. So the main restaurant at the time, and still is called Rio Bongo. It's where the breakfasts are held. And
Okay.
I will say this for the resorts, the pricing was much more reasonable than I anticipated.
Well, that's good.
So the unlimited breakfast buffet, I want to say was $20 or something like that. Reasonable. We didn't do the buffet as much. It wasn't as big as what we had seen. We got omelets, for your $10 omelet type thing. But
Yeah.
the food was excellent. It was great. Monkeys like to visit because if someone drops some bread, they're going to take it. And so in my video, you'll see there's a monkey sitting on the roof eating bread, and the staff comes and gets all the kids and lets them take pictures of the monkey. Um,
Cute.
there is Ostra, which was the adult only, the higher end one we mentioned. Once again, very good foods, just pricier. And so you just kind of have to know that going in. Our favorite one was called Chow Piscal. It is a tapas restaurant. And so you order kind of family style, 3 or 4 things and kind of share it. And they have drinks from around the Caribbean and around the world. And they have a really cool presentation. And it's a much more happening place. Um, the bartenders and the servers were just so engaging, and you're sitting out in this balcony and the whole thing's lit up with these little lights down below you. It was a really cool vibe, as I sound like I'm trying to be younger than I am, but it was really cool and we really enjoyed it. That was the place we actually went back to for a second dinner. It's the only one we visited twice. We thoroughly enjoyed it.
Awesome. And was there live music? I had seen that on the website.
They did. Yeah, they have live music. Most of it's more of the Caribbean flair. You get your steel drums and things like that.
Nice.
But they mix it up.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share about the Hyatt Andaz that we haven't covered?
No, I would say this for the Andaz. The Andaz was renovating a restaurant called Mesa. So there's another restaurant on site now that I just don't know anything about. So they may have even more dining options than when we were there.
And then was getting back to the airport easy? Did you still have the rental car?
We still have the rental car. And so rental cars down there are pretty typical in price. The airport's about 35 minutes from the resort, maybe 40, depending on traffic. We flew out at 9:30 in the morning. There was a United flight that left in the morning, and it was the only one that got us in before midnight. And so
Hmm.
we opted to take that one. And so we pulled up to the airport, and like I mentioned, walked through security in about 90 seconds, and we're ready to go. Uh, we got there way too early in hindsight because we had
Yeah.
a couple hours to kill before the flight.
And it's a
And the
small
airport,
airport, so there's
it's
probably
a
not
small
much going
airport.
on.
No, it doesn't have a lot going on. So yeah, we just sort of killed time as best we could and had breakfast at the airport and that type of thing. But by and large, yeah, I mean, we had zero troubles with travels while we were there.
If you went back to Costa Rica with your family, would you try to go to that small airport again just because of the ease of it?
I would, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with kids, and even as they get older, it gets easier, but still you're just constantly counting your children to make sure that you still have them all and that they're
Yes.
all following with you. And I just found this one so easy to navigate and just such a dream. I can't speak to San Jose's airport because I didn't fly in there, but just from what I've read from others, it's more of your typical larger capital city airport and just
Yeah.
a little more hectic.
Got it. Okay, I end every episode with a question, but since you visited two different resorts in Costa Rica, you're going to get two questions.
Fair
So,
enough.
first, if someone out there is considering visiting the Costa Rica rainforest, what is it about the Nayara Gardens resort that would make you say, just book it?
You'd be hard pressed to find a nicer place to spend your week in the rainforest than this. I mean, it gives you the opportunity to be close by to the nature side of things. You can hike the waterfalls, you can do the adventures, but at the same time, my gosh, the amenities are to die for. So it really gives you an opportunity to have the best of both worlds.
And finally, if someone out there is considering visiting the beaches of Costa Rica, what is it about the Hyatt Andaz that would make you say, just book it?
Yep. So if you're going to go to the Pacific Coast, the Andaz takes wonderful care of you, and all at a reasonably affordable price, whether it's points or cash. They really have priced things in a reasonable way. The staff is fantastic. There's activities for kids. And so if you're looking for a family-friendly resort that is probably more what you're used to, I would say the Andaz would be tough to beat.
And free snacks and drinks.
And free snacks or drinks. Can't forget that.
Well, Ryan, you have been a wealth of knowledge about visiting Costa Rica on a couples trip. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate your time and look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yes, have a great day and happy travels.
Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of Trip Tales. If you have a trip you'd like to share about on the podcast, email me at triptalespodcast@gmail.com and I'll add you to the schedule. Also, be sure to follow the show so that you don't miss any upcoming vacation destinations. And if you have an extra minute in your day, please leave a review for the podcast. It helps more than you could imagine. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of Trip Tales. Hey guys, I wanted to quickly share about a cool way you can support the show. Travel content creating and podcasting is so fun. But as you travel lovers know, traveling can get expensive. While I may receive trades from time to time, the flights, the behind the scenes hours filming, editing, recording, and sharing are often unseen and unpaid. There is this super cool website called buymeacoffee.com that was created specifically as a way to support creators like me. Buying Me a Coffee is a quick and simple way to show your support for the Trip Tales podcast. And Lord knows this busy Mama 3 could use a coffee to keep me recording and sharing, and maybe help with the grocery bill as well. I'll also give a special shout out by name to anyone who buys me a coffee in the following week's episode. So if you love Trip Tales, I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can get there by visiting buymeacoffee.com/Kelsey Graves. Thank you for considering supporting the show.